yeah, being a Kamilaroi man, I'm very passionate about my people, and I'm passionate about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people doing well and being resilient, being strong. And I, just I wanted to give back because I'd lived quite a bit of a troubled life when I was younger, and in the sense of experienced a lot of trauma and especially childhood trauma, but I'd come out the other side of that, and I figured that if I had something to offer in terms of a mentoring role, we know that mentors change lives. Like, my first book was Reptiles in Color by Harold Cogger, and that book changed my life. But I also met a man when I was 16 that worked at Taronga Zoo, who was an Aboriginal man named Paul Sinclair. And the notion you can't be what you can't see. I really admired Paul as a kid because I didn't know any other Aboriginal zookeepers, and that is exactly what I wanted to do. And so I figured that it was time at that point in my life. It was time that I had spent some time with younger people, just like Paul did with me. And um, I've started volunteering for this Indigenous program, and it was this career days. It was these career days here, but there was no science, and I was working in science at the time, and it actually just started with me on my iPhone and doing these talks with these kids, and talking about rockets and you name it. And kids are the best scientists because we all have a natural epiphany with science. Whether you're getting in a Tesla and you're wondering how all those motors and those sort of gears work, and how a car just becomes so fast without any making any engine noise. That is a form of science. This interview is a form of science. I'm putting words together as a form of chemistry. We're communicating with each other. And the hypothesis is that you're going to like what I have to say or you're not. Um, but that, like, science is all around us. But our people were the first scientists of this country, and we're the first astronomers, we're the first forensic scientists. For a long time, the New South Wales Police Force employed Aboriginal trackers to find people in the bush because we were the first forensic scientists. It was just, it's just fact. So when, I'd go to these events and these kids are, there's NRL there, there's AFL there, there's art, there's the army. I really just wanted to give them another option, which was science. And it sort of grew from there. And these talks, I quite literally got mobbed during these talks. It was, 40 or 50 kids that would just stand around me. They'll be asking me all these questions and I'll be trying to answer. Sometimes I'd have to come back a week later and be like, here's the answer to your question that, I didn't know on the top of my head. I'm not a genius. So I had to go and work and find out the answers to a lot of these things. And then it sort of evolved, and I did what most weird people do. And, again, it was probably a time in my life where I figured that, I'm in my mid 20s. I play a bit of footy on the weekend. I go to work. I come home. I was in a relationship at the time, but I wasn't necessarily spending my money or my time doing productive things. So I go, you know what, I could do more. And I did what most weird people do. And I started Googling remote schools and figuring out, these kids are so good at science and so smart, and I believe in them. What can I do at an earlier age? And what can I do for the kids in community that don't live in the city, that don't get the option to have science, And I started sort of contacting these schools, and then, particular schools would have like 15 books in the school. They'd have like, 50 books in the school, but none of them are science. We have no science equipment here. We don't really teach STEM. We don't really have the capability to teach the science that is appropriate. So I guess that's how it sort of built. I packed up every book I owned, including that book, Reptiles in Color, and I sent it off because I know that, if a kid picks up a book that I've sent for 5 minutes and reads through it, then that's 5 minutes that kid gets to escape into a book and learn and thrive and grow. And that 5 minutes is better in that kid's hand than sitting on a shelf somewhere gathering dust. So I kind of just, that's how it kind of grew. And then I'm like, well, why not send a telescope? Why not send a microscope? Why not send a set of kits that is going to, create a dozen lesson plans? And, it went from that 40 or 50 kids that I was sort of impacting to now 9,500 kids that across Australia that are, they're loving deadly science. I mean, just last night, as I was sort of in bed, I get this message flash up on my phone, and it's a teacher sending me these photos of, these kids doing engineering, and it's because of deadly science. And I think that, that's just for me, that's like, there's so many things that are negative around the world at the moment. There's like, we've got this huge pandemic that's just affecting everyone. It's affected me, it's affected you. It's, and it's really sad. Like, we see a lot of the stuff that's happening in India at the moment, which is terrible. But for me, when I see a kid holding a deadly science book, or I see something positive, it reminds me that humanity is actually quite beautiful, and it's we actually do have a lot of good in the world that we should be embracing. Um, you know, Sometimes the negativity sells papers and gets clicks, and that's fine. And I'm guilty of clicking on that stuff myself, but I know that every day that a kid benefits from deadly science and this charity, then it's going to be a really good day.